Good morning. Please come in. How may I help you?
Well, Chief, I've been asked to teach this program called Learn Not to Burn. Can you please explain why we're required to do this program?
Yes. First, let me start by giving you a national perspective of the fire problem in the United States. Each year, over 3,000 people die in house fires. Of that 3,000, 4% or 120 are children. There are another 450,000 injuries that result from fire. These injuries oftentimes leave children with permanent scars.
But I live in Tennessee. I'm not sure how this affects me.
Okay, I understand what you're saying. When data is collected on a national basis, this data is broken down by states. So let me ask you something. Out of the 50 states, where do you think Tennessee ranks in fire fatalities?
30th in the country? I don't know.
Would you be surprised to learn Tennessee ranks between 2nd and 6th place for fire deaths? In other words, at times, there is only one other state that ranks worse than Tennessee.
Okay, point taken. How can I help?
Perfect. Let me explain to you about Learn Not to Burn. Learn Not to Burn was developed by the National Fire Protection Association and in an agreement between the Nashville Fire Department and NFPA, we are able to offer this program. The program uses a preschool curriculum program.
Did you say preschool? I teach 2nd grade.
I understand, but let me explain why we chose the preschool program. When we examined the data of children's deaths and injuries for the past 10 years, we saw 5 distinct patterns. As a result, NFPA, in conjunction with teachers, professors, children's psychologists, sociologists, as well as others, took these patterns and further analyzed them, and they designed this program. Also, we learned that when children talked about fire safety, they were telling us exactly what they saw on TV. For example, how many times have you seen movies that show the room is on fire and everyone is still walking around in the smoke?
A few?
In actuality, during a fire, the temperature in the room can rise to 1,200 degrees in less than 3 minutes, and the smoke is so thick that you cannot even see your hand. No one can survive those types of temperatures, not even firefighters.
Wow, I had no idea. But you still have not answered my question.
I know. I wanted to make sure that you had some background information so you could understand why we chose this program. So here is my answer. By using the preschool program, all children will have the same foundation on fire safety and will know to differentiate between what they see on TV and what is real. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
Okay. The program has 5 lessons. Each lesson talks about a specific behavior that we want the child to learn and, more importantly, understand. Each lesson takes about 15 to 20 minutes to teach. The program is designed in a way that you only need to teach 1 lesson per week.
Why 1 lesson per week?
We realize students and teachers have a lot to cover during the day, and to add to that load is unfair. We also knew that if we taught 1 lesson per week in a school year, each child would get about 10 hours of instruction on fire safety. Each lesson has a series of headings that I suggest you read beforehand and get a clear understanding. Take, for instance, the first lesson. Firefighters are community helpers. On page 5 through 7 of your book, there are 6 headings. Teacher information, teaching points, objectives, materials, procedures, optional extension activities. It is important that you read each section and understand the contents. Here is why. Take, for instance, the first heading, teacher information. In the second paragraph, it talks about how children are scared during an emergency. Then we come in with large boots, a mask, and a tank on our backs, yelling and moving furniture all around. What would you do?
Hide.
Me too. When there is an emergency, kids get scared and hide. The problem firefighters face is that kids are so good at hiding or have special hiding places only known to them that during an emergency, we are not able to find them until after the fire is out. At this point, it is too late.
But don't they know how to get out?
You would think so, but research tells us that when a fire occurs, some kids believe that they might be blamed for the fire. As a result, they do what comes natural to them, hide. And if they know that the fire was actually started by them, it's even worse.
Okay, so is there a specific way you want me to teach each lesson?
No. As a teacher, you have all of the knowledge, skills, and experience in working with children. Our training in that area is limited. We know what causes fires and leads to fire deaths, which is why we're asking you to teach these behaviors.
Well, Chief, I guess I get the importance of this lesson.
There's one more thing I want to explain about this lesson and the rest of the lessons. If you look at page 8 of your book, you will see that there is a letter. The reason for the letter is to inform the parent what the teacher is covering in school related to teaching fire safety. I am forewarning you about this letter because the last thing we want is to get 1,000 phone calls from parents telling us their child is talking about fire and they do not know why.
Okay.
Now, let's go to lesson 2. First, I want to give you some statistics why smoke alarms are important. Before the invention of the smoke alarm, over 12,000 persons were dying in house fires due to smoke inhalation. When smoke alarms were invented, the number of deaths dropped to 6,000 per year. Today, we average about 3,000 per year. But here is the most important part to remember. In 70% of these fire deaths, fire investigators found a smoke alarm in the home. Do you know why they died?
They were asleep when the fire started?
Well, yes, that's part of it. I will tell you, in these homes, either the battery was old and not working, or the battery had been taken out. I will tell you one more alarming fact about smoke alarms. Today, in 40% of the homes, there is not a working smoke detector in the home, meaning if they had a fire and someone died, their deaths could have been prevented had they taken the time to replace a $3 battery. Now that I have cheered you up, let me explain lesson 2. When you look at the lesson, realize that the most important things for kids to remember is knowing the sound of a smoke detector. Let me explain what I mean. In your school, you have fire drills, right?
Yes.
Why?
To make sure kids get out of the building in the event of a fire.
Do you know how many children have died in school fires in the United States over the past 10 years?
I don't know.
None. The reason for this is because their ears are trained that when they hear the fire alarm sounds in their school, they are to line up by the door and follow a specific path and go outside and wait. However, many of these kids do not practice fire drills at home, so they do not know what the sound of a smoke alarm sounds like. More importantly, they do not know what to do when it sounds off during an emergency.
I understand what you're saying.
There's one more important thing to remember, and that is the letter. Make sure that parents get the letter so that they can work with their kids on this at home. Now, lesson 3. First, do you need to take a break?
No.
Okay. Lesson 3 is about fire drills.
I know about fire drills.
I know that. I'm just going to add something to keep in mind when you teach this lesson. When you have a fire drill at school, kids follow a routine, yes?
Yes.
Well, at home, things change. Do you know what that change is?
I'm not sure.
Let me ask you a question. At school, when you have a fire drill, how many of your kids make sure that they take their books with them for fear they would burn?
None.
I thought so. At home, things are different. We have items we value and are dear to us. For kids, these items could be an old stuffed animal, a blanket, and so on. Here is the problem. When kids practice fire drills at home, the first things kids want to do is find their toys. That is the problem. Kids need to know that when the smoke alarm sounds, they need to get out of the home immediately and stay out and meet at their designated meeting place.
What do you mean by their designated meeting place?
When there is an actual emergency, chaos and confusion ensue. Kids are yelling and crying, and parents are going frantic looking for their kids. In the lesson, it talks about having a meeting place outside and away from the house that the whole family can meet during an emergency. So when a child shows up to that meeting place, they know they are to wait for the parent. This keeps the parent from going crazy looking for their kid and the child from going back in to search for their parent.
You know, I never thought about that. I don't even think we know where to meet my family if we had an emergency. I believe this is going to be a topic of conversation tonight.
Good idea. Let's talk about lesson number 4. Oh yeah, one more thing about lesson 3. Don't forget the letter to send home. In lesson 4, the main point is to stay away from hot things. For the most part, this is a very easy lesson to teach, except for a few caveats that throw the whole lesson off.
My kids understand what is hot and cold.
Do they?
Yes.
All right. Is an iron hot?
Yes.
Is it hot when it's in your closet or when you ask your child to bring mommy the iron?
Okay. I see what you get.
Not yet. One more question. Is a wagon hot or cold? The type that kids use to pull around.
Cold.
Yeah, you are right. But what if the wagon is metal and it's summer and it's been outside in the summer for a while? Is it hot or cold?
Hot.
My point. To you and me, we know what is hot and we know what is cold. But to kids, their reasoning is based on what they are born with and what they experience. That is why I mentioned the wagon and the iron as examples.
I hear what you're saying, but what do I tell a child who tells me that their mother asked them to touch items we are teaching them not to touch, like bring mommy her lighter?
Tell the child that when their mommy asks them to bring them something that is hot, to answer by saying, my teacher told me that if I touch hot things, they can hurt me. This way, if the parent has a problem with the message, they can call you or me directly. Do you know how many complaints we get each year from this form of answer?
A few?
None. Parents know that they would never call me and tell me I'm going to put my kid in a dangerous situation.
You're right.
Last thing, do you know what I'm thinking?
The letter?
Correct. Let's go on to the last lesson. This lesson is also easy to follow and teach. Just keep in mind why it's important. When you work with kids, we all teach them to explore new sounds and textures. However, in the fire service, when it comes to matches and lighters, we do not want them to experience the consequences of playing with fire.
Well, it seems logical, but why don't we just incorporate this into the last lesson of hot things?
It's simple. When kids are growing up, they are curious about everything they touch. Matches and lighters are no different. The only problem is that when a kid is told no, the first thing they want to do is hide with the item. Well, that is until the child starts a fire, gets scared, leaves the room, and hides. In the meantime, the mother is somewhere in the house and starts to hear sirens and say, "I hope everyone is okay," not knowing that the house the fire department is responding to is theirs because little Johnny has set the closet or curtains on fire.
I understand what you're saying about matches and lighters, but I don't follow you about closets or curtains.
Hide and go seek? Where do kids hide over and over again because they believe they will not be found?
Got it.
Well, that's all for the lesson. Any questions?
No.
Now I want to talk to you about how to get started. The first thing you want to do is click on the following link, print this sheet, download the book onto your school computer, and print the book. Once you have the book in hand, go over the lesson plans and incorporate one lesson per week into your weekly lesson plan. Also, look at the sheet and follow the links and access each lesson online. In the online format, you can access sound bites and songs for each lesson. These two can be downloaded into your computer and used whenever you need them for your lesson. Once you are finished teaching all 5 lessons, you repeat teaching one lesson per week until the end of the school year.
Wait a second. Why repeat the lesson over and over again?
As with math, English, and any subject, repetition is the key to learning. In the fire service, former research has shown us that when a child is taught a behavior one time, they forget the behavior. Hence, the reason for reinforcing the behavior over and over.
Got it. Well, Chief, I don't want to take any more of your time. I have to get home and get ready for tomorrow.
Okay, I understand. It's getting late. Please, before you leave, if you have any questions, please do not hesitate to call me.
I will. You can count on that. Thank you and goodbye.
Goodbye.